Okay, we're recording.
Get off.
Pee on our couch.
Oh my gosh.
Is this recording?
It's totally, I hit record right as Preston started into that dialogue, so forever immortalized. Excellent. I have no problem with that. Okay, we'll hop in. We have a few stragglers, which is totally fine. We're going to hop in today because we cover a lot of ground in this second week of the Count of Monte Cristo. So I was just checking in. Where have Ben and Will? We go I'm like, wait a second. I don't even think Will's back yet from his class. So, just as a reminder, next week is spring break. We are not holding class next week. So if you are feeling behind or anything like that, all you have to do next week is read, okay? Get caught up, all that kind of thing. So, no class next week, but we did decide, if you remember, to continue to have a reading assignment next week so that we don't have to have this class extend into the same week as Coyote Camp and Mayhem. So, anyway. Huh?
March Madness.
March Madness, yeah. I can have March Madness.
I
It's
thought it was
Mayhem
only
that gets me.
women's today.
You what?
I thought it was only women's March Madness today. Oh, never mind. What? Maybe it's just them.
I don't keep up with any of that, but I know all my boys and their team are very on top of it. Okay, let's dive in. Count of Monte Cristo, chapters 14 through 25. Those of you who were not here last week, we're kind of changing the format for this specific book and how we do our lectures because this book just runs a little bit different, and especially since it's abridged, it kind of plows through the story very quickly. So we are just kind of taking it chapter by chapter through the lecture, and then if you have anything you want to add to those chapters as we're discussing, feel free to just jump in. So you're invited to be a part of this at any point. So let's dive in. This starts with chapter 14, which, by the way, how does it going with your chapters and your Roman numerals? Everybody good?
Yeah.
It gets more wild the further on you get in. So I'm handing out a sheet today that we're going to do at the end of class that's kind of a character map guide, and on the back it has some Roman numeral information. Luckily, the abridged version, we only get up into chapters like 80 some odd, I think, but the unabridged, you're like well into the hundreds for Roman numerals, so sometimes they get long. Okay, so chapter 14, the treasure. Hi. So we'll touch on some of the highlights in this chapter. This is Farius speaking to Dantes. Farius, obviously, he's having a health issue. Do you guys recall what that is? What's Farius' health issue that he's struggling with? He has strokes. He has like these seizure, stroke issues that he's having. Good. What does he ask Dantes to do to help him when he has these issues?
Give him drugs.
Give him drugs?
Yeah, like pry his teeth apart and then pour the medicine.
And pour in this red file liquid medicine, okay? We're gonna touch on that. So, Farius had 2 strokes. On the 3rd stroke, he says, what's gonna happen to him?
Yeah.
He says, I'll probably die. This is what happened to my father and my grandfather, okay? So Farius talking to Dantes about this. He's talking about the paper. This paper, my friend, I can tell you everything now, for I have tried you. This piece of paper is my treasure, half of which belongs to you from this day forward. Yes, it is true. I often thought with bitter joy of these riches, which are vast enough to make the fortunes of 10 families, and which my persecutors will never, I feel like this went out, hang on, and which my persecutors will never enjoy. This has been my vengeance, and in the despair of my captivity, I have lived on it during the long nights spent in my dungeon. Okay, I want to take a minute to kind of talk about this a little bit. So what is Faria in possession of?
Treasure.
He knows where the treasure is.
He knows where treasure is, a vast treasure, right? And he's going to tell him this. We're gonna read how he got a hold of this treasure. Hey guys, come on in. What's Dantes' response to this in the book? When Farius says, I have a treasure, how does Dantes respond? Do you recall?
He thinks he's crazy.
He thinks he's crazy. He's like, oh, okay, this is the badness getting to you, because this is not a likely thing that this random old guy who's been in prison 4 years longer than I have has his vast treasure somewhere, right? I want to focus in on this last part that I've highlighted in bold. This has been my vengeance, and in the despair of my captivity, I've lived on it during the long nights spent in my dungeon. So the theme of vengeance and revenge really in this book is a big one. So Farius telling Dantes that he has gotten his vengeance and his revenge how?
By withholding treasure.
By withholding treasure from
Everyone.
everyone, and particularly those his persecutors, right? He says, I have this secret. There's this huge treasure which they would like to have, and we're going to read about how he kind of came in possession of this. And he's like, but as long as I'm in prison, I'm the only one who knows where it is. They'll never have it. And that has been my revenge on them. My vengeance is knowing that they want that and they haven't been able to find it. Good. We're going to talk a lot more about vengeance as we go on. Faria then goes on to Dantes and explains that he was arrested just as he was about to leave to gather his treasure. He says, you are my son, Dantes, exclaimed the old man. You are the child of my captivity. My profession condemned me to celibacy, but God has sent you to console the man who could not be a father and the prisoner who could not be a free man. Okay, so what is Faria promising to Dantes?
Part of his inheritance.
His inheritance, right? He's saying, I'm taking you as my son. Because I was a priest, was never able to have a son. So you are my son, and this is something that I'm going to share with you. Now, in this abridged version, it goes over the story of how Faria came to get the treasure. Is there anyone who could kind of briefly summarize that for us, who got a handle on it that feels like they could tell? How did Faria get in possession of this treasure to begin with?
It was a really long story.
And it was a little complicated, right? That's why I wanted to just take a second and review. Thoughts?
Well, I know he knew someone who was weren't they descended from the people? Because the original story was this guy tried to murder two guys, but then he never found the inheritance of the one really rich guy because his treasure was hidden.
Yeah.
And so it was his descendant that the Faria knew. But I don't know how his descendant died. But I know that something happened to him, and then the Faria was looking around somewhere one day, and he found the paper with the location.
Found the other half. Good. Yeah. So it was a cardinal that he was working for,
Okay.
and this cardinal was poisoned and killed. Okay, by his enemies who were trying to get their hands on all of this, right? And like you said, then Faria came in possession of the second sheet of paper, which was important. Why? What did he have originally that he needed the other piece to? It's written out in your book in kind of a funny way. He had a piece. So he had basically one half, like this. This is on page 68 in your book. He had one half of the directions basically to the treasure. And apparently it was on a sheet of paper that was ripped vertically like this, right? And so then he had to get his hands on the second half. Yeah.
Didn't it get burned? Didn't you burn it? Like half of it? And translate the other half?
It could be, yeah. I can't remember the exact details. At Faria, did you mean?
Yeah.
He probably did. Luke's ability to catch details in here is really good.
Yeah, he was trying to. There was a candle was buried lit, and he was trying to light it more, so he grabbed the paper, and then he saw it had words on it, so he burned it halfway.
There you go. Okay, so that's how it got split in half. So how did he get the other half then?
He made it up. He was like, "This is the words that go here."
He figured it out on his own?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I read this 3 months ago, and so some of these details I should have made better notes. Good. Okay, so then if you go on to page 74, you'll get the whole thing put together. Okay? And that gives us the whole thing. And this is what he's telling to Dantes, and has Dantes read this. Okay. Do you believe, so in this quote, let's see, let's go back to this one. Nope, this one. Do you believe that it was vengeance that ultimately consoled Faria? When he told Dantes, he said, this has been my ultimate vengeance. What ultimately consoled Faria?
Dante.
Yeah.
Good.
Okay.
Is that human relationship, right?
Yeah.
What is Dumas saying in this story about vengeance in general? What can we get from this? This is sort of foreshadowing, because we know that Dantes is going to go on and have kind of his own vengeance cycle that he's vowed, right? What do you think Dumas is saying with Faria and Faria's experience?
I kind of feel like he's saying that revenge is something that can keep you going, and it can be a good motivator, but it's not an end. Like, in the end, Faria would have died alone with a paper, you know?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
like, it might have been enough to keep him from suicide and things, and been some sort of motivation, but he didn't find fulfillment without, like, friendship kind of thing.
Good thoughts, Cosette. Other ideas? Yes, come on in. Sorry, we're late. No, you're just fine. Good. Okay, I agree. I think Cosette's analysis is a really good one. So do you think Dantes will learn from this experience about his own desires for vengeance? Do you think he'll learn from Faria in this experience? Yeah? Yes, no? Why or why not?
I just don't know. I think he's kind of young, so he's gonna have to go through more experiences to learn more. Because I feel like he already did the same thing earlier, and so he's just got more to learn. But.
Good. Good. Yes, I like that. What else?
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah. Do you think Dantes is going to learn from Faria's experience, or do you think
Like
he's
with
going to
revenge specifically?
about revenge?
I don't know. I think he might do revenge and then be like, oh, I shouldn't have done that because of this thing. I think it might be an afterthought.
Okay.
I feel like he'll like it. I feel like he'll get everything he wants from them.
Because the thing with Faria was that I don't think he regretted keeping the paper or
Okay,
anything.
yes.
Like,
Yeah.
I don't think the revenge was a negative. It just wasn't enough. In the end, I don't think it would have been enough to fulfill him. So I think that Dantes will get revenge and that it will be that he'll view it as a positive, but I think that in the end what's going to be enough is if he gets like his family and everything back, you know?
Excellent. So you think that revenge and vengeance by itself is not enough? That's what you're saying.
Yeah.
Good. And that's what we see exemplified in Faria. Good. Any other thoughts on that? We're gonna see where Dantes' brain is here in a second. Okay, if we go into chapter 15, this is titled The Third Attack. The quote, page 75. Daily would Faria expatiate on the amount, holding forth to Dantes on the good a man could do with, sorry, I can't see very well with my glasses, could do his friends in modern times with a fortune of 13 or 14 millions. Dantes' face would darken, for the oath of vengeance he had taken would come into his mind, and he was occupied with the thought of how much harm a man could do to his enemies in modern times with a fortune of 13 or 14 millions. So,
That's how much in the treasure there was.
yeah, there's an exact, when we get to the treasure, that we'll be able to kind of calculate some of it. That's about the estimation.
That's
Some
almost
of
like
it's-
burying Amazon underground.
It's almost like very, yeah, back then for sure. This is a huge, huge treasure. So Faria is excited because why? Faria is telling Dantes, you could do what with this treasure?
You can help all your friends.
Imagine all the good that you could do with this treasure, right? And Dantes is thinking what?
Imagine how I could gain my revenge.
Imagine the things that I could do to my enemies with this treasure, right? So as we go through and read the book, you kind of read ahead a little bit. You know some of what he's going to do. Do you think it will be all for good or all for ill?
Both.
Both.
I think Dantes starts out really innocent and just like good-hearted and things,
Uh-huh.
but I think he also starts out naive, and I think that him exacting revenge is him learning that he needs to be able to take care of himself and his family. Because like, he can be a good man, but he doesn't start out a smart man, and so I think that it is kind of helpful to his character arc to have a little bit of vengeance, because I think that it's going to make him a better protector for his family. Whereas
Okay.
before, people around him got hurt because he was very trusting and things.
That's
It
true,
makes
right?
him a more complex character. In the beginning, he's kind of boring. He
Yeah.
gets super complex.
Yes, he does, doesn't he? So that naivety that Cosette talked about ultimately hurts those around him. Does this remind you of a previous book that we've written, where being naive ends up hurting those around you?
Frankenstein.
You seeing that theme come in a little bit? Good, good. I think you're spot on there. So Faria had more experience than Dantes about understanding what brings happiness and what doesn't. Faria hopes that Dantes will learn from his experience, but Dantes has maybe got his sights set elsewhere, right? That's what we learn from this chapter. Okay, let's go to another quote in the third attack. Another quote section. So he has this next attack, and he has the red file. I want to take a minute to talk about the red file and what it is, because this is actually a really, really important symbol in the book. Okay, it's going to come up again and again. This red file is an elixir or a poison called brucine, okay? When Faria had seizure attacks, he instructs Edmond to give him medicine, which is a red liquid. The liquid called brucine can be used as medicine in small doses or as poison in large doses. In small amounts, this red liquid could build up physical strength and ward off strokes, but in large amounts, it could cause death. This symbol of kind of poisoning and the balance between doing this medicine that can do good or evil, depending on the balance and how it's used, becomes very important in the story, okay?
It seems like a metaphor for the revenge arc.
Ding, 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 ding. Yes. Good.
He didn't poison Faria though, even though he poured the entire thing in his mouth.
No, Faria was gone. He was gone. He knew that was going to happen. Yeah.
I was like,
Yeah. Wait, which side was he on? I'm taking all for myself, man. Yeah.
No.
Yeah. No, that's not what happened there. Okay, so the elixir or poison, we're going to call it both, symbolizes the power to give life or take it away. It can also represent the poisoned mind of vengeance, which spot on. In small doses, revenge may seem like a good and even a noble deed. In large doses, things can go wrong. Okay, good. Any other thoughts on the elixir before we move on? Okay, so on the third attack, Faria, as we mentioned, he dies. And these are his. Did you have an emotional response to that? It's so hard because the mentor, why does the mentor always, they don't always have to die, but there's some point in the hero's journey or in any of this kind of archetype with the mentor, they can't go with the hero the whole way. So this is that.
I don't get why the author went into so much detail about the stroke. It was kind of disturbing.
Yeah.
It made it easy.
And that was the abridged version, right? So who knows what else.
I don't feel like it's like a kid's book. I feel like that it's.
Who knew?
Yeah, no, I would not have my middle schoolers read this one.
Yeah, it's like I feel like that's the kind of thing that people would have wanted to read in their magazine in the new edition or something.
A little sensationalized, maybe. Yeah, that was a. I don't know. I don't know if this was a. Maybe we talked about this. Do you recall if this was a serialized novel?
It was.
Yes. Okay. There you go.
Yeah.
So that keeps the readers coming back, right?
Mm-hmm.
We see sensationalized novels like that a lot. I just finished reading The Woman in White by Wilkie Collins, which was another sensationalized novel, and it kind of has some stuff that you could tell it was just like, come back for part 2, sort of a dramatic thing. But yeah, this is not a book maybe to read out loud with your kids when they're really young.
They will not get it.
Yeah, besides the, yeah. You guys are ready for it. Okay, so as Faria is dying, these are his final words to Dantes. He says, "And now, my dear boy, sole consolation of my miserable life, whom heaven sent to me somewhat late in life, yet sent me an invaluable gift for whom I am most thankful. At this moment when I must leave you, I wish you all the happiness and prosperity you desire. My son, I give you my blessing." Okay? So Faria departs at this point, and what happens to his body?
Gets put in a bag.
Let's put it back, Sterling.
They burn his heel.
His heel with to mark him?
Yeah.
Yep. Good. And then they put him in,
Remembering that.
they put him in a bag.
Wait, how does that work? Because he's in cell. They're not supposed to know that they're in the same cell, right?
Yeah, they don't know. They don't know. So they being the guards, so Dantes goes and he hides. The guards come in, and when one of these prisoners, when they die, what they do is they remove all their clothing, put a mark on them, and then they sew them up into a bag. And then they'll be carried away to have the body disposed of. And here's where we get into some of the excitement, right? What does Edmond do at this point?
He like switches places with the body.
Things get wild, right? Edmond was struck by a sudden and terrifying idea. So they wrapped him up in this cloth bag, and then the guards have gone out to go grab the people who will then carry the body out, okay? He, being Edmond, slipped into the sack, placed himself in the same position as the corpse, and sewed up the sack again from the inside. What did he do with Faria's body?
Put it in his bed or his cell.
So he carried Faria's body back to his cell.
He also put the rag that he always wore over his head so they wouldn't notice that.
Yeah, I made it look like he was sleeping.
Made it look
because
like
he was usually asleep at that time.
Which is exactly, if you guys remember last week, we talked about Alcatraz and the most successful that they know of escape attempt. That's exactly what they did. They created kind of these fake heads out of, I can't remember what they used it out of.
It's like paper mache.
Yeah, that's right, it was. It was like a piñata thing. See, Sterling's here, he knows. And kind of painted that and put fake hair and stuff on it. So when the guards went by at night, they just would look in the cell and see what they thought was someone was sleeping. So maybe they'd read the Count of Monte Cristo, I don't know. Apparently it worked in both cases, okay? All right, so then Edmond. If they took him to the cemetery and placed him in a grave, he would allow himself to be covered with earth. Then as it was night, as soon as the grave diggers had turned their backs, he would cut his way through the soft earth and escape. The moment had come, he summoned all of his courage and held his breath. So his plan is to escape how?
By being buried alive.
But being buried alive, which is not like, I wouldn't recommend it. You better hope it's a pretty shallow grave to be able to get out. Good.
I mean, he's been like digging tunnels for like 5 years, so he'll be fine.
He'll be fine. You know, there's the whole weight and suffocation, but he's gonna. It's a risky venture, right?
I wouldn't.
And the workers are lazy, so.
Good. So this is what he expected to have happen. What actually happens?
They threw him in the ocean.
What is the cemetery at the Chateau d'If?
The water.
The water. It's typically the cemetery, but lately they've been using
And I'm too lazy. I'm just gonna chuck him off.
chuck them off the cliff, right? So this is, we talked last week that the Chateau d'If was a real place. So this is the cliffs hanging off the chateau. Okay. So he's thrown into the water in a bag, complicated by what additional element of
And
Chain.
weight.
Tied his legs.
Cannonball.
tied his legs?
And they have like a cannonball.
Cannibal.
Okay.
What in the Houdini is he supposed to do, right?
That's nice though.
What do you think, Lydia?
I thought it was so funny when the guards are like carrying him up the stairs. Like, oh, he's so heavy.
You have this old man, this frail old man, what the heck's going on, right? Good. So he gets thrown into the water, and at this point, here we are in the novel. This is on page 82 if you want to turn on your book. They go and they're going to throw him off, and one guard says, farther on, farther on. You know, the last one was dashed on the rocks, and the next day the governor called us a couple of lazy rascals. This is not good for Dantes, right? He's in there and he's like, the last one didn't even make it to the water. He got chucked onto the rocks. They went another 5 yards, very reassuring, and Dantes felt them take him by the head and feet and swing him to and fro. 1, 2, 3. With the last word, Dantes felt himself flung into space. He passed through the air like a wounded bird, falling, falling, ever falling with a rapidity which turned his heart to ice.
Imagine you toss the body and you just hear it scream.
Which is another, he had to be quiet, right? He had to buy himself time, because it's not just get into the water, but get in the water and escape. That becomes an important thing to have as much time as possible. So it turns out that the sea is the cemetery of the chateau.
Wouldn't it be hard to like hold your breath as you're being thrown and then like underwater? Just, like,
And you can't even see where you're going.
yeah.
Like you might be
sewn
hitting
up
the
in a
rocks,
bag.
for all you know. Yes. Yeah, so this is one of the points in the book that it gets hard to put down. It's exciting. So how does he ultimately get himself out of this predicament?
Knife.
He had a knife with him. Luckily for him, right?
Yes.
Which I will say, if you've seen any movie versions of the novel, they're very good. I like them very, very much. From here on out, the details start to get way off the book. Yes.
I just barely with my family. I watched it because
Did
I
you?
told them I was reading, and my dad was like, "Yeah, we should watch the movies." So we watched the movies.
Uh-huh.
I know what you're talking about.
You're like, oh, this is right, this is, oh, that's wrong.
I know.
It's such a complex story that they just have to cut characters and merge storylines. And
Characters.
I know in one of the movie versions at this point, he gets flung off and he grabs
He like grabs like the guy's like
the key. Is that the one you
and
saw?
then,
Yeah, tell us about
and
it.
then he like falls into the ocean with him, and then he like kills him.
Yeah. Ooh, that's unfortunate. But he was a mean guy. He was the head of the prison. So, no.
Oh,
Yeah, so he
also,
grabs the
like,
key and that's
in
how
the
he
prison
escapes.
when they get whipped every year. That didn't happen in the book.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no.
They
Yeah.
just added that in because
Yeah.
they had to do that, I guess.
And that chasm between the novel and the movie versions is just going to continue to widen. I keep seeing you scratch, thinking you have something. That's why I keep looking and pointing at you. If you have something right behind, then I won't miss you. Okay. So he ends up where? I should say he ends up where? Like you'll remember all these names off your head. At this Isle of Tiboulen, maybe something like that. So I pulled up, this is actually Google Maps, because I was like, these are real places, and I was curious. I expected, here's the Chateau d'If on this little teeny island here. I expected that he was going to make it to something like this, but it's actually all the way down here, this little island here,
Oh my gosh.
that he made, which is remarkable.
Why didn't he just swim to the other side?
My guess is the ocean
I feel
currents
like he
might run this way a little bit.
Probably.
I feel like you wouldn't even be able to see the land. Swimming
Oh,
back.
he did.
Yeah, it's-
He thought it was a big cloud, and then he thought he got shot, but it was apparently just a rock that hit him underneath.
It was a rough swim, right? And he gets here in what kind of shape?
Naked.
Uh,
Not in shape.
he's naked this whole time, right? Because he had to get naked when he got in the sack. Yeah, so he's doing this skinny dipping swim, and he gets here, and he's not in great shape, right? He's thinking, I might die here on this rock.
Nobody
There's no
would be in
extent.
great shape after that.
Yeah. Good. So that's how far. And then this is Marcel. This is the area where the rest of the book takes place. Okay. So he gets there, and he's on this rock, and he turns again to God, and he says, "Oh God, my God, thou knowest I have suffered to excess. Help me now that I cannot help myself." As Dantes finished this fervent prayer that was torn from his exhausted and anguished heart, he saw appearing on the horizon what he recognized as a Genoese tartan coming from Marseille. Okay? Dantes prays, and miraculously he is rescued and taken to the mainland. Now, how is he rescued exactly?
He found a shipwreck, right? And he disguised himself as a sailor and was like, "My ship was wrecked. I need your help."
Yeah, perfect. Which is an important detail because why? Why could he not just be like a random naked guy on the island?
Because they knew that he escaped from the chateau.
Word had gotten out that a prisoner had escaped from the chateau, which is probably also an important thing that he ended up that far away. Because like you said, most people would have expected that a prisoner would just kind of come this way or go to these larger islands, right? So he was in the right place. And he luckily gets himself some clothes, miraculously so, because during the night there's a smaller wharf that gets shipwrecked. Unfortunately, those sailors don't make it. And he's able to put on their clothing, which makes it more convincing when he's trying to say, "I was shipwrecked." And so then these men take him on board. Now, how long has he been in prison? Do you recall?
14 years.
14 years. He is in rough shape, right? So he asked for a mirror. He was now 33 years of age, and his imprisonment had worked a great change in his features. Edmond smiled when he saw himself. It was impossible that even his best friends, if he had any left, would recognize him. He did not even recognize himself. Okay, I want to point out a couple things. One, do you think it is significant that Dantes returned from the grave, as it were, or the chateau at age 33? Does that ring anything for anyone?
Oh.
Yeah.
Why did Dumas choose 33? That's when Christ was killed and resurrected. So what is Dumas trying to say about Edmond?
It's like a new life.
It's a new life, right? He's had a sort of resurrection, right? He is meant to be a Christ figure, which we talked about briefly in the book How to Read Like a Professor. He talks about folk tales and fairy tales in literature, Shakespeare in literature, and then the Bible in literature. So, do you think it's significant that he's also changed so much in his physical appearance? Why so?
He just likes to fool people.
It's very helpful for what he's going to try to do. Absolutely. Other thoughts?
I feel like it helps his change as a person. Like he's like a man now instead of like the boy who like made mistakes, and he like knows more and is smarter and has more depth.
Yeah. Kind of shows that he's overcome his naivety.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Do you remember when we talked about the hero's journey? That in that cycle there is a sort of symbolic death that happens for the hero's journey before they can come back and become the hero, right? So this is Dantes's hero's journey, and this is his death and his rebirth, okay? Good. So let's talk about Dantes as a Christ figure for a minute, just because in literature when we see a Christ figure, it's supposed to help us understand the great conversation and understand a few things that the author is trying to say. So, Dantes has been reborn, remembering the hero's journey. He's experienced suffering, transformation, and now will become a bringer of justice, okay? He's now in possession of an elixir which has the power to restore or take away life. He is to become omniscient and omnipotent in a way as he returns back home. this time with treasure and his secret identity. So the treasure will allow him to be able to basically will things at his command. And then he has an understanding that those around him don't have, which is he knows who these people are. They don't know who he is. He knows their past. They don't know. Anyway, there's a lot of them have gone into hiding at this point. Okay, so he becomes this sort of Christ figure.
He was also sent to the jail as a sacrifice for Villefort.
That's a great point. I hadn't even thought of that. That's true. That's true. He is sacrificed for someone else's gain, as it were.
Did he spend the whole night with the elixir?
Yeah, I didn't know he had the elixir.
Yeah, it's not mentioned.
No, isn't the elixir symbolic of like?
It's symbolic. He's going to get his hands on some because now he knows what it is.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
There's no way that
He's now familiar with the
I gotta keep
concept.
on just random bombing.
Yeah, it's with him the whole time. Yeah, no, the rest of it went down his throat. But it's going to pop up again. Okay? So he's a figure, meaning he's not meant to be an exact replica. He's not meant to be Christ. Okay? As we will see, Dantes is very much human. Fallible human. When an author creates a Christ figure in literature, he wants us to examine the character's power, sacrifice, and morality. Okay? Dantes is going to face each of these themes as the story develops. You can kind of think of this as this is his Spider-Man moment, okay? With great power comes great responsibility. And we're going to see how he handles that responsibility, okay? All right, let's talk about the Isle of Monte Cristo. We finally get to the title of our book and where it all comes from, okay? Why does he seek to go to the Isle of Monte Cristo?
With its pleasure.
For the treasure. The treasure is hidden there, right? Sorry, I'm just, okay. It's a big crowd over there. They're going to the other house. Okay. So he goes to Monte Cristo. He basically goes into disguise, gets himself there, and then is finally able to get himself there alone so that he can go see the treasure, right? And this is where we pick up on page 92. At the end of an hour, the boat had completely disappeared from his view, the boat that dropped him off and was going to come back. And rising more agile and light of limb than the kids jumping about these rugged rocks among the myrtle and mastic trees, Dantes took his gun in one hand, the pickaxe in the other, and ran toward the rock on which the incisions terminated, meaning this is where he determined that the treasure would be buried based on the, I keep wanting to say map, but not the map, the instructions that he had gotten from Faria. Now, he exclaimed, thinking of the story of the Arabian fisherman, which Faria had related to him, now open sesame. What is the story that Faria had related to him that he's referring to? Anybody know?
Is it like
Alibaba.
Alibaba.
Yeah.
Yeah.
7 thieves.
Alibaba, good, and the 40 Thieves, good. That comes from,
Seven.
I said 7.
No.
yeah, Alibaba had them 40 thieves, Scheherazade had 1,000. Anyway, that one.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
So Open Sesame was first seen in the French translation, which Dumas was. French, okay. Of 1001 Nights, which is a collection of Arabian folk tales. The specific story is that of Ali Baba, which we identified, where the magical phrase is announced to open a secret cave of treasure. Now, I think that this story runs deeper to the Count of Monte Cristo, the narrative, than just that he's going to open a cave of treasure. That's the obvious connection. There's other connections with this story. So I found, it's hard to find a brief one. Most of them were 18 to 20 minutes, but I found kind of a brief overview to get in your head or introduce to you if you're not familiar with the story of Ali Baba and some of its themes. This is just a little overview of that story.
Long ago, in a small town in the Arab lands, lived Ali Baba, a poor woodcutter who barely made a living. He spent his days in the forest, chopping wood to sell at the market. Despite his poverty, Ali Baba was an honest and hard-working man. One day, while gathering firewood, Ali Baba saw a group of 40 thieves led by their leader heading toward a hidden cave. He hid behind a large tree and watched as the leader stood before the cave and uttered the magic words, "Open sesame!" Instantly, the cave door opened and the thieves entered, carrying sacks filled with gold and jewels. After the thieves left, Ali Baba decided to try his luck. He stood before the cave and said, "Open sesame!" To his amazement, the door opened. revealing a cavern filled with unimaginable riches, gold, jewels, and treasures accumulated over the years. Ali Baba filled a small sack with gold to carry back home, careful not to attract attention. He closed the cave door using the same magical words and returned, knowing that his life was about to change forever. Ali Baba's older brother, Qasim, who was wealthy and greedy, noticed the change in Ali Baba's fortune. He pressured Ali Baba to reveal his secret. Reluctantly, Ali Baba told him about the cave. Eager for riches, Qasim set off to the cave alone. When Qasim entered the cave and greedily filled multiple sacks with treasures, he forgot the magic words to reopen the door. The thieves returned and found him inside. Furious, they captured and executed him, leaving his body as a warning to anyone who dared to steal from them. The thieves soon learned of Ali Baba's connection to the cave and plotted revenge. They devised a plan to infiltrate his home and kill him. However, Ali Baba's clever and loyal servant Marjana uncovered their plot. The thieves hid inside large jars placed in Ali Baba's courtyard. Marjana, realizing the danger, poured boiling oil into the jars, killing all the thieves. Her bravery and quick thinking saved Ali Baba and his family from certain doom. After the threat of the thieves was eliminated, Ali Baba decided to share part of the treasure with the needy in his town. He became known for his generosity and courage, keeping the secret of the cave within his family. The tale of Ali Baba is not just about wealth, but about intelligence, bravery, and loyalty. It reminds us that greed can lead to ruin, while wisdom and courage can save lives and create happy endings.
Okay, so the story of Ali Baba is a story of a treasure that when used well to help people goes well, and his brother, who was selfish and wanted personal gain and power, it didn't go as well. Okay? There's also another important person, which is the I always forget how to say her name. Anyway, the girl who saves him. This is foreshadowing, okay, of a similar person that we're going to come across in the story in next week's reading, okay? That will be a help to Monte Cristo.
Okay.
Okay, so the treasure in the cave. Dante's hour of anguish had arrived. To dig through 2 feet of earth was all that remained to him between supreme joy and bottomless despair. The pickaxe had encountered some iron substance. Never did funeral knell or alarm bell produce such an effect on its hearer. The chest was uncovered. And if you recall, what was inside the chest?
Money.
There was money. There were 3 things.
Money, gold, and jewels.
Money, gold, and jewels, right? Very valuable diamonds. There are 3 compartments, so this is a sketch of it. It shows 2 of the compartments.
A big chest.
It is. It was a big wealth. Okay, let's talk about this quote from chapter 20, The Stranger, on page 97. He now longed with impatience for his companion's return, for in truth he could not waste his time in Monte Cristo looking at this gold and diamonds, like a dragon guarding a useless treasure. He must return into the world and take the rank, influence, and power in society bestowed by riches only, the first and greatest force at a man's disposal. This is the second time in the book that Dantes has talked about dragons, right? Do you remember when was the first time? We talked about it our first week.
Oh, like the building? There was a dragon on the building, right?
There might have been. That might have been what brought it up. But what did he say specifically about dragons? This is before he got arrested, before any of that happened. You guys recall?
That it felt weird for him to be happy and have everything without having to fight a dragon first.
There you go. He said, I feel like I'm marrying Mercedes, everything's going well. It makes me nervous because a fellow doesn't usually come into this kind of fortune without having to slay a few dragons first, right? Mm-hmm. And now here again we refer to the dragon, and you can't help but think of Smaug with this description, right? Do you remember when we talked about archetype? What do dragons do with their treasure?
Hoard it.
They hoard it. They don't do anything useful with it. They just hoard it, sit on it, guard it, and harm anyone trying to take it away. So he's saying here that's not his intention, right? He doesn't want to just sit around. He wants this boat to come back so that he can basically go out and start, okay? So this is how literature works. I just want to take a moment to point this out. The more you read deeply and learn about literature, the more references and common language you will understand and share with great authors. Because you've recently read The Hobbit, it may be that I noticed, Luke, you had marked this passage in your book, right? I saw that. It may be that you start to notice these little winks and nods from the author that's referring to a greater outside of the story conversation that you'll become more familiar with as you spend more time in Greek literature. It's like all the Easter eggs start to become more visible. Okay, let's move on. Chapter 20, the stranger. So Dantes returns, and who's the first person that he talks to? The first of his former enemies that he talks to. Do you remember? Yeah, we have as many pronunciations for it as that's French words for you. Cataro, Cataros, Catarus. Okay. Yeah, yeah. My understanding is it's Cataro. But that's based on hearing a few professors say it that way and some don't. Okay.
Just call him K.
Okay, or C. It starts with a C. Cad. He comes back and he runs into Cad. Okay. I'm getting a little ahead of myself. So before that, Dantes inquires about his father and Mercedes, and what's the news that he gets?
He's dead.
It's not great news, right? He had a sad reply to each of the two questions put to him. His father was dead and Mercedes had disappeared. He had quite expected to hear of his father's death, but what had become of Mercedes, okay? And then he stopped forth onto the Cannebier alone, unknown as it were, a stranger in a strange land. So there we get another reference. Yes?
This whole first part of the book really reminds me of the Odysseus story.
Uh-huh.
Because he has to go and face all these trials while she's there and there's a bunch of guys.
Yeah, the wife is there and all the guys are saying, well, you have to, he's been gone too long, you have to marry us. And are they interested for love, or why do they want to marry her so badly?
For her beauty mostly, I thought.
Beauty and her wealth.
Right.
Odysseus is a man of great wealth, right? So you're right. So this story, except it's kind of inverted, because there's the whole story, and then that's kind of the denouement. He comes home and saves her from that. Although for her, it's the whole story. Mm-hmm. With Dantes in this book, he goes through his trials kind of early on, and now the rest of the story starts here. Yes, Lydia.
Okay, so I was just kind of noticing there's a theme throughout this, from what we've read so far, of fortune and misfortune. Because Edmund is he's super fortunate. He's gonna marry the love of his life, and he's been promoted to captain. But then he becomes super misfortunate, and everybody who condemns him becomes super fortunate and super wealthy. I'm like, how did they suddenly just gain all this wealth? Yeah. Anyways, and then everybody who was supporting him is now suddenly very misfortunate.
Is suffering. That's a very good point. We're going to talk about where everybody's at this point, but you're right. Those who supported Edmond up to this point are not doing great, and those who hurt him have landed in pretty good position. Okay.
That's probably how the author felt as well during the French, all the political stuff.
Yeah.
They would flip-flop tables so much,
Yeah. And we see that in the story that some even benefited when Napoleon came back and some did not, and all those things. Okay. So let's get into that. So the first person, like we said, Dantes meets is Cataro. Dantes is in disguise as an abbé and tells Cataro that Dantes has died in prison, to which Cataro replies, "Poor fellow." Dantes says, "You seem to have been fond of this boy." "I was indeed," answered Cataro, "though I have had it on my conscience that at one time I envied him his happiness. But I swear to you, Monsieur Abbé, I swear it on my honor, that since then I have deeply deplored his lot." Now, do you guys recall what was Cataro's part? What part did he play in Dantes' fall?
Being really drunk and not stopping people.
Yeah, mostly being drunk and not doing something good, just staying on the sidelines.
I feel like he also had a big part because I feel like he egged them on without needing to.
A little bit, yeah.
He did egg them on, yeah.
Good. So where's he at when he thinks about this now? Do you think? Well, I guess he says it pretty plainly, right? He regrets it. Okay, so then Dantes learned that his father had died of starvation specifically. Quote, "Who are the men who caused the son to die for despair and the father of hunger?" Die of despair and the father of hunger. "Two men who were jealous of him, the one through love and the other through ambition. Their names are Fernand and Danglars. They denounced Edmond as a Bonapartiste agent. Both were guilty. It was Danglars who wrote it with his left hand, and it was Fernand who posted it." Okay. So now, Dantes already kind of had an idea of this because Faria sort of helped him to just, magically figure it out by reasoning and fill in those gaps. But now he's going to get the full story here. So, in chapter 22, titled Cataro's Story, it says, I let myself be overruled. This is Ketero speaking. I kept silence. It was cowardly, I know, but it was not criminal. I regret it night and day. I often ask pardon of God for it. It is no doubt the cause of my adversity. I am paying the penalty for one moment's selfishness. Now, this ties back very interestingly towards what Lydia said, which is that those who are against Dantes seem to be doing well, and those who are for him, not so well. How's Ketero doing?
Not so well.
Not so well. And how does he feel about what he did to Dantes?
Bad.
Okay, so I think you're spot on, Lydia. That was a great thing to point out. So Ketero also tells Dantes of Monsieur Morel's actions, which, if you recall, Morel was the one who owned the ship, very much like Dantes. He said, the day before the old man's death, meaning Dantes' father, he left on the mantel shelf a purse which contained sufficient money to pay off his debts and to defray the expenses of the funeral. Thus the poor old man was enabled to die as he had lived, without doing wrong to anyone. I have still got the purse. It is a red silk one. Okay, we need to take a moment to talk about the red silk purse. Just like the elixir, this becomes an important symbol in the book. Okay?
I was thinking that.
Were you? Okay.
Yeah, as soon as you brought up the elixir, I was like, the red silk first.
And I just say they're both red.
Yeah.
Any thoughts about that? Color matters in literature. I should look up red here. I have a pretty good take on it.
Does
Any
red
ideas why
symbolize
red
like
matters?
vengeance, maybe, or
Could be vengeance,
No,
revenge,
specifically, like,
violence.
love, passion, and violence.
Love, passion, and violence. Good. And then I'd also throw in, if we're supposed to understand Dantes as someone who has had to sacrifice and as a Christ figure, there's a little bit of that mixed in there too, back to the Christ symbol, okay? So like I said, the red silk purse represents the connection between good deeds and their reward. It becomes a symbol of kindness and help for those in need. The red silk purse represents the idea that actions undertaken without self-interest can return to benefit us in unexpected ways. Morel's kindness will be rewarded to his posterity, okay? So this red silk purse kind of becomes the means for Dantes to bring justice to those who deserve goodness and reward as opposed to those who don't. So pay attention to the red silk purse. Let's talk about Danglars and Fernand and where they're at, okay? Danglars currently has become a millionaire and was made a baron. Does that feel like karma to you for what he's done?
No.
Not so much. And then Fernand, a little more complicated. He was promoted to colonel when he went out and served in the wars during Napoleon's 100 Days and received the cross of an officer of the Legion of Honor. He then changed his name to the Count of Morcerf. Now, this is where books like this, Tolstoy's the king of this, it can get complicated. So we're going to create a character map, which I need to make sure we have time to do that. He has two names now, so don't get confused. When you see the Count of Morcerf, that's Fernand, okay? But he's kind of created an alias and changed his name in part because he's wants to distance himself from his former life. Mercedes, after waiting for Edmond for 18 months, finally gives in and marries Ferdinand. Does she love him?
No.
No, I keep saying Ferdinand because of the book Ferdinand. Ferdinand. She doesn't love him. Why does she marry him then?
Well, I know, but because I watched the movie.
What does it say in the movie? Let's see if it's the same.
Hopefully it's the same thing. But,
Uh-huh.
she was pregnant, so she didn't want the people to think bad of her. So
But if
she
it's
married
18
him to make
months.
them.
Yes, so not at least in the abridged book. Is it that way? We might be missing some things. In the book, it describes that Fernand is away. He's at war. She's totally alone and lonely. She's missing Dantes. And then when Fernand comes back, she thinks, well, at least here I have someone. I won't be alone. So she basically marries him to not be alone and lonely.
18 months.
Wait. She had.
He comes back and she says, give me 6 more months till Edmond, to wait for Edmond. And then Edmond doesn't show up. She basically gives in and marries Fernand, okay? And then Fernand and Mercedes do have a son named Albert, is how everybody says it in French to my understanding, okay? Albert. Okay.
It's much prettier.
So upon learning, the French make everything sound beautiful, right? Upon learning that Mercedes has been married, Dantes says, frailty, thy name is woman. Did you catch that, Cosette? I was wondering if you would, of all people, you and Eleanor. Okay, this is from Shakespeare's Hamlet. Okay, this is a quote from Shakespeare. Like we read in literary analysis, when you see Shakespeare, it's meant to be there and it's meant to give us a wider understanding. Hamlet says the line to renounce his mother's hasty marriage to his uncle Claudius after his father passes, okay? So then Edmond gives Catero a diamond and asks for the red silk purse in return. So Edmond feels, when he hears Catero's regret in his story, Edmond forgives him, offers him a diamond from the treasure, and then Catero says, what can I possibly do for you? And he says, well, give me, this ratty red silk purse in return, okay? And that's basically the end of his vengeance on Catero. Things went pretty well. Meaning, Catero was repentant, and so if you think of him in Christ figure, you have this, he's repentant and he's forgiven, okay? All right, the prison register, chapter 23. Let's just dive in and read this. I should have given more.
Follow this chapter. I was like, oh,
It's a little confusing. It's a little confusing. Basically, Dantes goes and he finds out all the information he hasn't fully gotten from Catero yet, right? He's filling in the blanks, okay? So he goes in and he goes to the prison register because he's trying to find out who put him in prison and how that happened. But he doesn't want to ask about himself because he's in disguise at this point. So instead he asks about Faria. And then, because Faria is 4 years ahead of him, and he was, 17 and 34, their numbers, and so he's able to also find his information. So this is the quote. After having pursued the first documents, Dantes turned over the leaves until he reached the deposition respecting Edmond Dantes. There he found everything arranged in due order: the denunciation, the examination, Morel's petition to free him from prison, Monsieur de Villefort's marginal notes. He folded up the denunciation noiselessly and put it into his pocket. He steals it. Read the examination and noted that the name of Nortier was not mentioned in it. Then he saw through it all. Who is Nortier? Do you remember?
Villefort's father.
Villefort's father. Villefort's father is not mentioned in this, which tells him if someone's trying to cover up for Nortier, who is it going to be? Villefort, okay?
Well, didn't he know that already?
He had suspicion, but now everything is fully proven to be true, okay? All right, so then he leaves from the register and he goes to visit Monsieur Morel, and son as the chapter is titled. So Morel has had a son, and again, we're making sure we got 5 more minutes, and then I want to use the last 15 minutes to go through our character map, okay? So Dantes goes to visit Morel and knows that Morel's final ship, called the Pharaon, which, why do we know that ship?
It was gonna be Edmund's ship.
That was the one that's going to be Edmund's ship, right? Has been sunk and leaves Morel in ruin. Dantes gives to Morel an extension of his debts, thus saving him from ruin. So before this, Dantes went basically kind of bought like the
shares?
The business shares, the stock that Morel would have to owe. So he's now the owner of all that. So when Morel's in ruin, instead of saying, well, give me all the money and now you're bankrupt, he gives him an extension, okay? So he's a stranger. Morel doesn't know who he is at this point. Then Julie, Morel's daughter, comes to Dantes, who's in disguise, to thank him. And Dantes says this line to her. Mademoiselle, said the stranger, one day you will receive a letter signed Sinbad the Sailor. Do exactly what the letter bids you to do, no matter how extraordinary the instructions may appear. And he departs, okay? Do you think it's significant that the final ship to sink, because he had 3 ships originally, is the same ship that Dantes was meant to captain?
Did you sink the ships?
He didn't sink it. He was just having rotten luck. Morel's having rotten luck. The Pharaon was Morel's last hope. And now who is his last hope instead? Though he doesn't know it. Dantes. Okay? So Dantes' ship has been sunk, but because Dantes has been spared and because Morel has been kind to him, he actually has another ship to save him. Okay? He mentioned Sinbad the Sailor, which is another reference to 1001 Nights. Okay, that's another story in that collection. And this story is a classic's hero journey. Sinbad faces mythical creatures and survives many dangers before returning home with a treasure. So why do you think Dantes uses Sinbad the Sailor as a reference here? Why does he use that as sort of his pseudonym in this situation?
He has treasure.
He has treasure,
Yeah.
right? He's gone on he's had to go through trials and difficulty, and now he's returned as a hero with treasure. So he's kind of giving us. Now we see a lot of these kind of Arabian stories, and the further we get in the book, Arabia, even though we're in France for the story, what's happening in Arabia politically and things are going to become an important part of this. So this is also kind of blending these 2 cultures that really lead throughout this story. Okay. All right, the 5th of September, Morel tries to find help for financial ruin. And the first thing he does is he goes, Morel remembered Danglars, who was now a millionaire and could save Morel without taking a penny from his pocket by guaranteeing a loan. Now, if you remember, Dantes didn't say, you don't have to pay me anything. I'm extending, you have a 3-month. He just didn't put him into ruin immediately. So Morel's still trying to figure out how to pay off these debts, right? So he goes to Danglars, but returns from Paris borne down by the humiliation of a refusal. So Danglars, whom Morel had helped in the past, does he agree to help Morel? No, he's just a jerk all around, the whole story. He's just a jerk, okay? Julie is then met by a man who gives her this letter. Go this moment to number 15 with a French address that I wasn't going to copy out. Ask the porter for the key to the room on the 5th floor. Enter the room, take a red silk purse that is on the corner of the mantel shelf and give it to your father. You promised me blind obedience, and now I remind you of that promise. Signed, Sinbad, the sailor. Okay? And what do we assume will be in the red silk purse? This is going to be the salvation, okay? And this leads us to the end. This leads us to the end of our section, okay? Morel, realizing his ruin, contemplates doing what he calls the honorable thing, okay? It's not, which is, in this time, place, and culture, is to take his life. So Morel, sitting in his office, cocks the pistol when his daughter rushes into the room and says, Father, you are saved, you are saved. She threw herself into his arms, at the same time holding out to him a red silk purse. It held the receipted bill for 287,500 francs and a diamond as big as a nut with these 2 words written on a piece of parchment attached to it, Julie's dowry. Now, we didn't touch on this earlier, but Julie at this point has a man that she loves, is engaged to get married, but why can't they get married?
Because she doesn't have a dowry.
She doesn't have a dowry, and it's kind of a, we'll go through the character map today. The person that she's engaged to, it's complicated, okay? They don't want him marrying her. Okay?
Her father's bankrupt.
Yep. So Dantes, in seeing the good he has done, then concludes with this very Batman-esque. This is his. He went through his Robin phase. Now he's going through his Spider-Man phase. Now he's entering Batman. Now farewell to kindness, humanity, gratitude. Farewell to all the sentiments which rejoice the heart. I have played the part of providence in recompensing the good. May the God of vengeance now permit me to punish the wicked. Okay, I'm Batman. That's what's happening here. So this is the turning point for Dantes in the story. Do you think that Dantes is doing the right thing by now turning to punish the wicked? Because he's rewarded those who helped him, right? The Morels and even Catereau. He's done good to those who did good to him. Now he's kind of turning his vengeance the other way. Do you
I
think...
feel like it's kind of complicated morally.
Okay, why?
I don't know, because like it technically, if you're thinking of him as like a Christ figure, he's kind of like bringing justice to the wicked, but it's also probably not the best thing to do.
Good. So where's the balance?
Yeah.
Batman is balance.
That's Batman's balance. Does Batman get to choose what the balance is?
Yes, Batman chooses balance.
For the rest of this book, I want you to read Dantes' voice in Sterling.
I will.
Okay, herein lies the question of the entire rest of the novel. Okay, when he extracts justice, is that the right thing to do, and why or why not, and when not, those kinds of things. Okay,
It's the interesting thing to do.
it's the interesting thing to do. I like that. Okay. We're going to be, if you need to leave, I will take a picture of this and send it to you. But we're going to map out the characters. Okay, like I said, next week we will have no class, and you guys are going to have 2 weeks worth of reading. A lot of people are going to pop up in those next couple of weeks, so I want to arm you with a character map so that you can refer to that. Like I said, I have my own. This is the character map I'm using, which is the unabridged character map. And it was very helpful, but quite complex. After having read the novel, I found the simplified one, which I think is meant more for the abridged high school version. I think this will carry you 90% of the way there. You'll at least know who the important people are and why, and we can fill in the gaps as needed, okay? So I'm going to pass these around, and on the back of some of them, most of them, but not the first few apparently, on the back there is a little guide for Roman numerals. This was a teachers pay teachers worksheet. I'm not going to make you do the Roman numeral thing, but if you need any guidance or want to understand the Roman numeral thing, you can have it. Okay. You like it? Well, then you can fill it out. It's not as complicated as it looks.
Well, when there's no names, it.
I know,
It
there's
looks
not
I'm
like
like,
a lot. I know,
who's
it looks
engaged
like
to
a lot.
who killed that guy? Like, what happened to that poor guy?
I will tell you, there are a couple of very small, minor spoilers on this when we fill it out. That being said, I wouldn't worry about it because reading the abridged version, if I didn't know,
Wait. Can you just tell us where Edmund goes and then we can figure
yes, Edmund is going to be right here in the middle, right above engaged to, with the heart next to it.
Okay.
Okay, Edmond, you can stick him. Edmond Dantes is going to go right there. Okay. There are a couple of spoilers, but I actually think it's good for you to have them so that when very subtle things come up, you will understand what's happening because it took me a second to even understand why some things were happening when I was reading it. Okay, so like we said, Edmond Dantes goes in that middle box. And then there's a little heart. Who does Edmond love?
Mercedes.
Mercedes. And this is just for you. You don't have to turn it in. So if you misspell a French name, nobody cares. Okay? Just as long as you know who it is. So that if you come across it.
Miss Holly, do you have a pencil I can use?
Oh yeah. Do you guys need pencils? Yes. There's a. Where is it? I had a whole container. I had a whole container of pencils over here.
No, I know what it looks like.
Oh, Sharpie?
No, it was a whole glass jar of pencils.
No, I'm not spelling that.
What was his father's name?
Do you know where the
Al.
under the desk?
It sounded like Albert,
Do you
but
see
it wasn't. It was
a
like
glass jar of pencils down here?
Albert? Albert?
That was so funny. I put one out at the beginning of the
Albert.
semester so we'd have it.
Oh.
Okay.
I'll just use a Sharpie.
Sorry, I can't find it.
Yep, I have lots of Sharpies if you want to use a Sharpie. Okay, Edmond Dantes. His father is often referred to Old Dantes. So Dantes' father is referred to Old Dantes. If you really want to know, his name is Louis or Louis. Okay, and that goes above.
Okay.
So what goes above?
What goes above is Dantes' father. This is just like a pedigree chart, like genealogy. The above is the father, below is the son or the daughter.
Is the one up in the top Abby Fario?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I
So
love
like
that.
she said, and then up here we have this line that stretches that's connected only to Dantes. Up in the corner, that's Abby Faria.
Okay.
Goes there, which you all are very familiar with him now, but we could just stick that there. So
What's
it's really-
Mercedes' son's name?
Albert. So
Albert.
Mercedes marries Fernand, and then her son is Albert. And I would put a note under Fernand, because his original name is Mondego,
Oh yeah.
but he changes it to Morcerf. So you may want to put Morcerf in there somewhere so that when they talk about Monsieur Morcerf, you know who it is. And Albert is going to be Albert Morcerf.
He's engaged to somebody.
Albert Morse there.
He is. Yeah, and we'll get there. We'll
What's
get there.
Oh, is he
Isn't he like
engaged
16?
to Julie?
Okay, we'll get there. Let's fill this out. So there's this line coming down.
Julie? He's so cute.
You'll see.
That's ironic.
There's this line coming down from Edmond Dantes. You're going to write a name in there, but you're going to get introduced to this next week. The name is Haydee. Haydee. And I'll tell you, this is the Arabian woman that you want to watch for.
Wait, that line down from Dantes.
The line that comes straight down from Dantes, past the engaged to line.
So wait, he
It's
marries
Haydee.
an Arabian woman?
Uh-huh.
Wait, what?
Wait, Dantes marries an Arabian woman?
No.
No, Haydee.
It's just a lie.
Oh.
Haydee. Because we watched the video about
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Alibaba, and I said, this Arabian woman who is a helpmeet and a rescue, pay attention to her. That's Haydee. You're just going to get introduced to her very briefly in
Is
section 3.
everybody in the bottom says it's not connected?
Okay, that's not connected to anyone, correct. Okay, now let's go over to this side. These are the Danglars, okay? So you have Monsieur Danglars, who's now a baron,
It is.
okay?
Wait, where?
Right over here, on this
Right
far
over here.
this
I
far
can't see
box.
that far anymore. Very far to the left.
The very far left box. The
Danglars.
first box under the word directions is Monsieur Danglars, who's a baron now. Sometimes they call them the baron and the baroness, so it might be helpful to put that there. And then his wife, Madame Danglars, is the baroness. And then the moment of truth. Who is Albert engaged to?
Julie.
Eugenie Danglars.
Oh.
Oh.
Eugenie?
How do you
Eugenie.
spell that?
Eugene.
Eugene, I-E. E-U-G-E.
Yeah, he was not engaged.
E-U-G-E-N-I-E.
Whoa, what? I thought there was a 9.
Eugenie.
Oh, well.
I served my mission in Eugene, Oregon, so I'm like, you spell Eugene, but I'm like, I don't think I knew how to spell that till I served there, so. Okay, that's the Danglars, okay?
I was sad I
Danglars?
Uh-huh. Now let's go right underneath that. This is the Morel family. So in the top line we have Monsieur Morel, the father, who has worked with Dantes this whole time. And if you want to know, his name is Pierre. It's not used very often in the novel.
Wait, sorry, where?
Classic
Right here, this
French
one.
guy named-
Right under the Danglars family. The first box is Monsieur Morel or Pierre. And he has two lines coming down from him. These are his two children. He has a son and a daughter. So in the one that comes straight down, put his daughter, which is Julie, which that's the one that Dantes wrote, is Sinbad the Sailor. And then the other white line coming down will be her brother, which is Maximilian.
Ooh.
It's like Maximilian.
Who's in the box next to Julie?
Julie, we'll do that one next.
He
So let's
loves
get the
someone
children
who's
first.
engaged to someone.
Julie and
Stop asking so
Maximilian.
many questions. I'm literally not there yet.
And if any of you miss anything, you can come trace this after.
This is too complicated.
Is this wait? What's his name? Emmanuel?
Emmanuel, very good. So Julie is married to Emmanuel
With an E or an I?
with an E. Emmanuel. And then I'll spell his last name. Herbal. It's HERBAULT.
What was it?
Herbal.
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 Yeah, it's spelled like Herbalt. AULT.
Oh, French.
Okay. So we have Maximilian. Now there's a little heart. Maximilian. He's in love with somebody. Let's leave that blank. We're going to come back to that, okay? Yeah, we're going to leave it in suspense. So up here, we have engaged to. Under that, you have Haiti, and then there's a box next to it, next to Haiti. That's where you're going to put Monsieur Nortier.
Where's that?
Which
Is that
is-
Villefort? Or-
Nortier.
And then you have Villefort.
Nortier. And then the line coming straight down from Nortier will be Monsieur Villefort. Very good. Ville, and then Fort. Villefort, or Villefort.
So Villefort's daughter is engaged to Maximilian.
No, she's engaged to someone else, but Maximilian loves her and she loves him.
This sounds like the makings of a soap opera.
It's very much so.
It is. It's very.
That's why we need to do this thing, so that as you guys are reading, you'll be like, who is this person? I can't remember. This helps
I can't
a lot.
remember anyone right
I
now.
feel like
Right
every
now,
soap opera
it's crazy,
has
but
a
like by the end of the book, you're gonna be like, oh yeah. It's basically like 1, 2, 3. It's 4 or 5 different families that we're following. Okay.
Wait, who is this one again?
That one is Nortier.
Abby.
Monsieur Nortier.
Abby
Who's he?
connected to.
He is the one who was a Bonapartiste that Dantes got sent to prison in his place. And he's Villefort's dad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You'll love her.
So we have Monsieur Nortier, and then we have Monsieur Villefort. Monsieur Villefort is married to Madame de. They say de Villefort. I don't know why. I'm not. If someone knows more French.
Madame Day.
Madame de Villefort. And her first name, if you want it, is Heloise. It is used actually. I would write that one down. That one's used more than most first names.
Okay,
Heloise.
now you're just making names up.
I know. HELOISE. One L. One L.
Mine just wrote HELOWEESE.
And there's, this is how it's spelled in our book, I think. Anyway, there's different spellings because depending on the translator, they translated the names
He
differently.
killed her father, but she's engaged to him.
Okay, now there's these two lines coming down from Monsieur Villefort and Madame. You're going to put Edouard de Villefort.
Edouard.
Yeah, and it's not spelled like Edward, it's spelled
I'm just spelling it
E-D-O-U.
Edward.
O-U. It's Edouard.
They just want to make spelling complicated.
I know.
So Edouard is.
Wait, E-D-O-U-A-R-D, right here. Edouard de
I'm
Villefort.
just writing Edward.
Where's Eloise again?
Heloise is right above it.
Villefort's wife.
It's Villefort's wife.
And then an E at the end, or just does it end with a D?
I just.
On which one?
Edward.
Edouard has no E at the end. It's just like Edward, except for with a W, you do an
Who
O-U.
didn't know your
Okay. Okay. Maximilian Morel. There's this line coming down from Villefort over here. Maximilian. That's Valentine de Villefort.
Oh, that's such a cute name.
That is a cute name. Valentine and Maximilian. Quite names. But Valentine, if we come over here, so we have. Sorry, I'll give you a second. And when your eyeballs are up, I'll know you're writing a button. I don't want to go too fast. Okay. So if we come back up here to Monsieur Nortier, The whole reason that Dantes got thrown in prison is because he's a Bonapartiste and he killed, so that line says killed over here, General Quesnel.
Oh. I don't know who that is.
It's over here. We don't yet, but we will. You'll get the whole story at some point.
No. I just figured it out. I
Wait,
read
General
about
what?
it today.
Wait,
General Quesnel, Q-U-E.
I went back over the first couple chapters and it said that.
No,
he
I
was
just
a-
said quiz.
S-N-E-L.
Oh, is it Snell?
Quesnel.
Quiz.
I like the Z better. It seems
I know,
more
quiz
French.
now.
Okay.
It's more French.
And General Quesnel is the father. You can write father here if you want, but then this line coming straight down is Quesnel's son, which is Franz, F-R-A-N-Z. Franz.
Sounds
There's
like
that
a
Z.
frat
Yeah,
movie.
there we go.
One of those like guys
There
that
you
are
go.
like,
Extra
like the guy is very
Okay, and it's Franz de Epinay. Okay, it's a D, lowercase d, apostrophe because it's a French name, D apostrophe, and then capital E-P-I,
I gave up spelling.
E-P-I-N-A-Y. I'll have this up here so you guys can come up and look at this if you missed it.
Is that his last name?
Dad killed him.
It's his last name.
Wow, that's complicated.
Franz de Epinay. It could be, that's why people change their names, and this is also people can buy into class. So if you're lower class, you can buy yourself into higher class. So we have a lot of kind of name changes and status changes that happen in the novel. Okay, if you missed any one of these names, feel free to come up and look at this. Otherwise, you've got 2 weeks of reading. So I would just fold this in half and keep it in your book. That's what I did, and it helped a ton. So when someone pops up and you're like, wait, who's this person again? Why should I care? You can refer to this. If there's somebody who's not on this map and you feel like you want more information about them, just jot their name down somewhere on here, and then when we come next week, we'll talk about them. So this doesn't cover everyone, but it covers 90% of what you need to know.
Matruccio. I don't know how to say his name.
Matruccio? Yeah, we'll talk about that. So any names that you need to know, you can come back next week. Okay, good luck. I'll see you in 2 weeks. If you have any, wait. Oh, I have papers to hand out, you guys.
Oh yeah. My friend.
I have 2 papers. And anyone who has papers to turn in, I'm still taking those. Lydia, Dia's not here. Lara, Luke, Jack.
That's yours.
That's yours. Eleanor, Sterling, Hazel's not here, and Rachel. Okay. Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. Good luck, you guys. Enjoy your Batman story.
Yeah, thank you for following.
You're welcome. Yes.
Your story.
Also,
No, this is
I
Batman.
read the abridged version of some
yeah. That's above and beyond. Yeah. That's totally fine. This is if you can't get through the whole thing. If you feel like you get through the whole thing, that's great. Then you can probably
No,
answer
I'm
us later.
getting ready to
Because there are a few gaps.
I think
Hey, you bet.
I leave
Enjoy spring break, you guys. It's so beautiful.
11 to 5.
Oh, Ella.
I
We need to live over
So I was like, how do I rewrite it?
what is it that you guys need?